Hi everyone, I'm Christeen. Today I'll be presenting about a unique, interesting topic called how can storytelling can be used to help young children develop and advance their literacy and communication skills. Moving into this slide, storytelling has long been the means through which people and communities pass on information from one generation to the next. Although this method has recently lost importance in the classroom in favor of story reading, storytelling has several means of engaging students into learning. While storytelling and story reading seems like similar techniques, they are in fact different approaches where storytelling is an oral tradition not involving the use of books, while story reading majorly involves reading out aloud from books to children. Be it in the form of cultural stories, fairy tales, legend, or personal stories, educators can use the storytelling techniques to develop listening skills, vocabulary, and communication in children within early childhood settings. The Early Years Learning Framework and Department of Education and Training places storytelling into the creative arts category. The creative arts allow children to express themselves in an imaginative and resourceful manner. According to Isaac, storytelling helps improve not only writing and reading skills but also children's listening skills. Stories often involve the use of repetitive sound patterns and words. Children tend to learn more when they are engaged and interested in how they are being taught. Stories tend to speak to children's imagination and creative spirit. Storytelling allows children to express their ideas through co-creation and two-way communication with their educators and their peers. Children are naturally inquisitive and like interacting with others, which makes the storytelling approach an ideal means of helping them improve their speech and language skills. The research questions are inquiry-based. The main question is, how can storytelling be used to help young children develop and advance their literacy and communication skills? First sub-question is, how do early childhood educators use storytelling to develop literacy and communication skills in children? The second sub-question is, why is storytelling an important part of learning in early childhood settings? The philosophical view underlining this research project will be socio-constructivist and interpretativist, since it will rely on the active contribution and engagement of the chosen participants. Due to qualitative nature of this study, the method of data collection will consist of open-ended questionnaires or survey, first-hand observation, recordings, and work samples which can provide descriptive data. So, what does the current research tell us? When children are exposed to new language and vocabulary through the means of stories, they are better able to understand these in the content of the story. This is also explored in the study by Bin in 2016, which aimed at analyzing how storytelling could help non-English speakers and learn English as a second language. Agosta in 2016 analysis found that children had demonstrated 4 main literacy skills in their cards and their verbal responses, namely visualization, cognitive engagement, critical thinking, and story sequencing. According to a story carried out by Broden and Renbelt in 2019, children who are exposed to story learning and encouraged to read out loud develop their ability to communicate and express their thoughts more easily and convincingly. Research has also shown that the literacy and communication benefits of storytelling can be used to achieve through use of multimodal means of learning, such as digital technology. Mayurine in 2018 examined how oral and digital storytelling could help children advance their literacy and communication skills. As compared to regular literacy activities, oral and digital storytelling lead to higher rate of advancement in literacy skills. A follow-up study showed that both digital and oral storytelling, when combined with play-based activities, increase children's literacy and communication skills. As part of play-based learning, exposing children to storytelling through digital mediums help and provide them with more enrichment and meaningful learning experiences. Digital stories tend to attract children with the additional of images, sound effects, and animations. One of the major limitations in this literature review is the fact that all these studies were not carried out in Australia. And though the research and the findings of the research have not been tailored specially to the Australian early childhood education context. As such, these articles cannot be considered to be fully reliable, as a result might differ with Australian participants. Another limitation is that most of these studies have no provided in-depth information about how the technique was implemented, which makes these studies hard to replicate. Another study was conducted in a single session, means that cannot be generalized to all the contexts, and the researcher did not analyze ongoing progress. One more limitation was in terms of small sample size, which begs the question of whether their result can be replicated successfully with a larger sample. Further research is required in this field, with studies carried out within the Australian context. These studies would aim at providing proper storytelling techniques that can be replicated, as well as carrying out longer studies to determine the level of success achievement in terms of advancing literacy and the communication skills of children. If these studies can be replicated to address these limitations, the main question of this literature review would also be addressed. Additionally, it would also be especially interesting to conduct research focusing equally on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people, as well as known Indigenous Australian. Indigenous cultures have the culture of storytelling embedded in their tradition, and they could be translated into more formal school environments to benefit all children. This could be also further the recommendation for an inclusive and a supportive learning environment as per EYLF. Ethical considerations are vital in any kind of research, even more so in early childhood education. Some of the ethical considerations for this research relate to adherence to code of ethics, providing participants with a consent form informing them to their right to withdraw from research, maintaining their confidentiality, the anonymity, ensuring collected data is only accessible to researcher and supervisor, maintaining respect, honesty, and objectivity, and also ensuring that the question asked will be direct, non-offensive, and non-discriminatory. The information will be gathered from the participants in preschool setting, a natural environment within which children can feel safe. In a preschool environment, children are able to develop their skills through collaboration and interaction with their peers, who are from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. As such, as the researcher proposed to make use of the interpretivism paradigm and will reflect a social constructivism philosophy. To demonstrate how the children's literacy and communication skills improved through the implementation of storytelling techniques over a proposed period of the research, the latter will be conducted in 3 stages over a period of 1.5 months. Stage 1 pre-test will occur in week 1. The researcher will observe the children in their normal routine and make recordings as necessary during the first 3 days. After the observations are completed, one of the educators will narrate a story to the class. The researcher will then engage with the children and record their own narrative of the story. Using the devised questionnaire, the researcher will also record the response of the 2 educators. Stage 2 implementation of experience will start in week 2 and continue till week 7. During this time, educators will consistently read to children through physical books, orally narrate stories, or use digital reading books. Stage 3 post-test will occur on the first day of the week 8. The educator will again narrate the same story as in week 1. to the children, and the researcher will then record the children's rendition of the story they heard. The researcher will again record the responses of the educators using the same questionnaire as in week 1, with a few additional questions to address the implementation stage of the experiment. During the rest of the week, the researcher will again observe the children during the normal routines. The sources will consist of recordings of the children and educators, observation notes from the educator during the implementation of the strategy, work samples made by the children during the experiment, and researchers' notes taken through direct observation. The researcher proposes to evaluate the information gathered using narrative data analysis. The researcher will analyze the information using different parameters, namely literature skills, communication skills, use of language, use of vocabulary, and narrative skills. The researcher will also consider the educator's feedback gathered through pre- and post-experimental stage questionnaires. Validity depends on the authenticity of the educator's records and the answers of their questionnaire. The researcher will ensure validity of the research at 4 levels, namely construct validity, to ensure that the experiment measures what is meant to; content validity, if the experiment represents what is being measured; phase validity, is the experiment suitable for the purpose it is designed for; and criterion validity, whether similar results are received from a different test. This is the last slide, and this slide will explain about the timeline for the research. So the week 1 is for pre-test stage initial data collection. Week 2 to 7 is experimental stage, where implementation of storytelling technique on the regular bias through reading stories out of physical books, oral storytelling, or playing stories through a digital medium. Week 8 is for post-test stage final data collection. Week 9 is for analyzing collected data. In week 10, adding conclusion and recommendations. And in week 11, we'll be completing final stages of research report. And in week 12, final project presentation will occur. I hope you'll enjoy this presentation and learn something out of this. And thank you for listening to my presentation.